Welcome to Barkhausen Nature Bites. Today we're talking about this critter right here, which is a muskrat. And then maybe some of you have heard of Rodents of Unusual Size, R.O.D.S. Maybe kids maybe talk to your parents if you haven't seen the movie. It's a pretty good movie, otherwise look it up. I call this more of a R.O.D.S, so Rodent of Decent Size. It is a rodent, it's a decent sized rodent. It's about average size for a muskrat. Nothing so big it's going to chase you through the fire swamp or anything like that. But this is the average size of a muskrat. This is an older taxidermy mount that we had, so it'll be bleached out in the sun. So the muskrat's fur is a lot darker than this. It's pretty light. They're usually a lot darker than this. But muskrats are very similar to beavers, but they're smaller, obviously, and they have a thin rat-like tail rather than a big broad tail. And they use that tail to kind of propel themselves as they're swimming around. They also have the big front teeth like a beaver, but they're not chopping down trees. They're going to be chopping down grasses and cattails, that wetland vegetation. That's what they're going to be eating. And they're going to be eating also those tubers and roots down beneath the ice and underwater in the mud in the winter months. And they do like this kind of habitat, these wetland habitats. That's a preferred habitat. And they have some really cool adaptations, allow them to stay underwater, sometimes up to 15 minutes. One of those that they'll close off their nose and they'll be able to reuse that air in their youngs over and over again and get as much oxygen out of as possible before exhaling. So they take a big breath, they keep using it over and over, take an exhale once they got as much oxygen as they could out of it. They also can tolerate pretty high concentrations of carbon dioxide, so again, that allows them to basically hold their breath underwater for longer periods of time, sometimes up to 15 minutes. They also have lips right behind their front teeth. So what that means is when they're swimming underwater and they got some vegetation in their mouth is sealed off. They're not taking gulps of water as they're swimming around. So that's a really good adaptation for an underwater critter like a muskrat. And they are similar to beavers, where they make lodges, kind of like a beaver, but smaller and more out of the grasses and mud. Definitely nothing extensive to the beaver's lodge. And they'll also make burrows into the banks, kind of like what we got right here on this wetland, burrows into this banks, and they'll have little dens inside that as well. So lodges out there, sometimes burrows in the banks, which definitely can cause some problems with some landowners. You know, I just about fell into one right here when I was walking out here. So inside those lodges and burrows, the female will have young. She might have 4 young, 11 young in a litter. Each year, usually about like May, kind of depends, but usually around about middle of springtime she'll start having young, and she'll have those, and they'll be born blind and hairless, and then they'll mature. Those young will mature in about 3 to 4 weeks, and then about 6 months after they're born, those young themselves are able to breed as well. And the female could have 3-4 litters a year sometimes. It really kind of depends on the season, but they should definitely have a lot of young each year. They had supposedly one female, they document having 46 young in 1 year, so that's quite a bit. There's a lot of muskrats run around here in the summertime. And they will hang out with family groups, but if this wetland starts getting overcrowded, those young are getting kicked out. And for the muskrats, they are an important food source for a lot of predators, so fox, mink, fishers, owls, and hawks, and many others, coyotes for example. So they're a big time food source for a lot of those predators, but they also provide some benefits to a lot of waterfowl, ducks and geese, and other wetland bird species in wetlands like this, where when they chew those cattails and they're basically open up pockets of water, well, a lot of ducks and geese like those open areas of water inside those wetlands. And their lodges are going to be good sites for turtles to bask on in the spring and summer. You'll see them out here quite a bit. Sometimes ducks and geese will actually nest in those old muskrat lodges as well. And what's fun too, in the winter, muskrats will make something called a push-up. They'll go through the ice and they'll start putting a bunch of mud and vegetation on top of the ice, and it's kind of like a mini lodge, and they'll have a bunch of them scattered throughout the wetland. It's actually what's kind of behind me right there, a little mound of mud and grasses out there, and those are called push-ups. And those are basic areas where they can feed and stay warm during the winter months and stay underwater and swim around and really stay out of sight of predators. So you'll see this quite a bit in the winter months. And again, a lot of other species of turtles and snakes and wetland birds will use those in the spring and summer months. So muskrats, definitely something to keep your eyes out when you're walking around the wetland. They are mostly nocturnal, but you'll see them at dawn and dusk especially, so maybe sometimes call them duskrats, and that's a stretch. But you'll see them even throughout the day. I just saw one a little while ago. So keep your eyes out for these R.O.D.S's, if you will, rodents of decent size. I don't care if you're in a fire swamp or regular swamp, keep an eye out for them. Thanks for watching Barkhausen Nature Bites.